Well, amigos, here we are again. And here I am wearing the same shirt after traveling from Santiago de Cuba to Havana, crossing the Gulf of Mexico, skipping bullets in the Revolución, watching Agustin Lara at the piano. You know where? I was there just for the music, believe me. Visiting the studio of XEW Radio, going to see Santa, the movie, I should add, and spending the night at a dance hall. What else? We've been to many places and lived many stories. Hopefully, we have unraveled the mysteries of Bolero, and next time you listen to Solamente una vez, your experience will be different. As you can see, Bolero is much more than romantic music. That's the point my shirt has been trying to make. Yes, it's Spanish and African rhythms, jazz and big band, crooners and prostitutes, soap operas and reactionary governments dumbing down people with their corny pop songs. That's all part of Bolero. But as I pointed out, that's not the way people tend to see it. It tends to be seen as nothing more than old-fashioned romantic music. Perhaps the closest thing to poetry many people have come to. Because, yes, the feelings and inner dramas are expressed using poetic images that, despite being corny, bring some kind of poetry into people's lives. And perhaps that's one of the reasons Bolero survives, and it becomes popular even among younger generations. I'll tell you in a minute why I'm still wearing this shirt. You'll see there is another story here. Because of time constraints, we have not talked about other songs and artists, but hopefully the two songs we've chosen have given you a good idea of what Bolero is and isn't about. As I mentioned throughout this module, it started as sentimental music, heavily influenced by Spanish Romanticism. But after arriving in Mexico, it went much further in the hands of Agustin Lara. It was somehow surprising that music that dealt with intimate dramas will engage in social discussions about authority, particularly about religion. As we've seen, Bolero became the music of the middle class, and the romantic aspirations mirrored their social ambitions. Again, the purpose behind all of this was to gain social visibility and to climb up the ladder. Latin American music tends to be class-oriented, or, in other words, each style tends to be associated with a social class. There was classical music for the elite, bolero and tango for the middle class, rancheras or country music for the poor, etc. These boundaries are not clear, but things have worked pretty much along those lines. In many cases, the youth have been responsible for messing things up. Rich kids began taking tango dance out of the slums, a young Agustin Lara transformed Bolero, and young rockers and mambo dancers almost put an end to Bolero in the late 60s. However, I can think of young bands who, in the 90s, reinvented Bolero, such as Aterciopelados in Colombia and Café Tacuba in Mexico. Their take on Bolero is fantastic, and they are not the only ones. Since we're talking about musical fusion, which is essential to understanding Bolero, there is an article you might be interested in because it follows the trail from folk music to Bolero, rock, and punk. Do check it out if you can. It'll be in the further reading section. By now, you must be tired if you read my article on Bolero and Tango, which is also in the further reading section. And obviously, you must be tired of my Guayabera shirt. But as I said at the beginning, it makes perfect sense to be wearing it now more than ever, because we are going back to the Caribbean. Yes, Santiago de Cuba is calling us back. Over there we'll find son, the music style where salsa comes from. Believe me, there are more wonderful stories ahead of us. Something happens to the romantic discourse of Bolero when salsa kicks in. By the way, you may already know that there are two types of dancing in Latin America. Close dancing or slow dancing, and the other one, when couples don't touch. We call them baile pegado and baile despegado, which literally mean glue and unglue. You get the idea. Bolero is a baile pegado. Salsa is a baile despegado. You dance bolero to get closer to your partner and perhaps whisper something romantic in his or her ear. That's how many people fell in love and perhaps still do in Latin America. Salsa takes them apart, although they can still touch each other. The rhythm is different, there is more physicality, a different kind of passion. The end result might be the same. Who knows? Falling or not falling for each other. There is more to salsa than dancing, as we'll see, even politics and social engagement. But again, you can still dance to those politically charged songs. That's Latin America for you. And you guessed it, a guayabera shirt is a must, whether to dance bolero or salsa. And now, if you'll excuse me, it's time to catch my flight to Santiago de Cuba, where salsa awaits.